We are now being recorded. So once this is done later tonight, I will upload all of this to YouTube. So.
So I do have a question.
Okay, you got one question before I really start.
Yeah, because not everyone is in as I thought. When it comes to top strings, you use two different ones, right?
I use a lot of different ones.
Okay.
I use anything and everything that I possibly can for the sake of whatever kind of top strings I do.
Yes.
Hello. When I do a top string, typically I'm doing it because I will generally I'll do like my style of top string, meaning I will do the kind of folded over 9-diamond top string that I always do. It kind of looks like a diamond, but it's 9-diamond like shifted a little bit. I'll typically do like 99 times out of 100, I'm doing some variation of that, whether it's dropped off the plastic or not. Like sometimes like this is very much dropped off the plastic. As you can see, there's a good like 1.5 to 2 centimeters.
All right, should we just walk?
I'm doing that for the purpose of what kind of pocket shapes I'm trying to create with the side. So the top string aids creating the shapes that you want.
Okay. Yeah, I was trying yours before, and I didn't know which version to go for.
Save that thought. We'll touch upon it later. Okay, fellas, everyone, I'm going to mute everybody so people are not talking over everybody.
Let me do that again.
Okay, everybody has been muted purely for the sake of making sure that you guys can talk and pick the phone up and talk to other people that are in your houses, but I just want to be able to try to get through this so I can get to all the questions. As I said a moment ago, thank you very much for everyone who is coming and tuning into this. I very much appreciate it. It helps me. Hopefully it helps you. I am Lars. I do all the Sidewall Jedi stuff. I am also the Director of Lacrosse Operations at Harvard for the men's lacrosse team there. Tonight we are talking about positional pocket placement. This is a presentation that I gave this afternoon about 3:30. This is to the Harvard audience, and this is a little bit more in-depth version of what I did there because you guys want a more in-depth. Everyone who I would imagine everyone that's listening in right now has an understanding of stringing and wants to learn more. So I can get in a little bit more in depth about all of this right now. So positional pocket placement. What does that mean? Pocket placement is generally where the ball wants to sit in the pocket during play. It's not where the pocket looks like it is going to sit in pictures. Sometimes it looks like it's where it is, where it looks in pictures. But other times I see people who are posting sticks that the pocket is not, I can easily, sit here, and this is generally like kind of a mid-highest pocket, but I can easily make it look like this is going to be a low bag and just be like, oh yeah, that's a low pocket. No, it's not a low pocket. The pocket placement is where the ball wants to sit when the ball is being cradled in the head. Generally speaking, there is your high pockets, your mid pockets, and your low pockets. There are variations of each of them. For the most part, this is one thing that I think our community, the lacrosse community as a whole, really, there's not a lot of argument about it. I don't agree with everything that String King says. There's a lot of pockets that String King creates on U-string or when they say, okay, if you want your their high pocket or their mid pocket. Like there's sometimes they'll say their low pocket. Like their low pocket to me is a hard mid in certain situations. It's somewhat preference. That it's difficult to argue that a mid pocket is a low pocket, but I digress. But generally, we think of variations of high, mid, and low. Why is this important? It's important for the sake of performance. You don't want to have a stick that you don't want to give someone a head. If you guys are all stringing sticks, you don't want to give someone a stick that is not properly tuned to their position and their play style. And I was mentioning it to Bastian a moment ago. Bastian, is that how you say your name? Bastian? Excellent. Good. Thank you. I'm glad I got that right. I know, like, my last name is pronounced Kyle, and everybody gets it wrong. Everyone's like, Keel? So if you, like, here's a good example of a STX surgeon. As long as the top string is tight, and then this one is, quite tight. As long as it's quite tight and it's symmetrical, that's the most important thing. You don't want it to be shifted to one side. You don't want it to be loose. As long as it's tight and it's symmetrical, you're in good shape and you're in a good position to continue down the stick and do a good job. Many of you who have heard me talk about this stuff before will understand when I say the sidewalls, how you string the sidewalls dictate the shape of the pocket. The shape of the pocket dictates how it releases. And when we're talking about pocket placement for different people and for different positions, it's our job as stringers, we want to create pocket placements that aid and assist and make it easier for a player who's using that stick to do their job. And that could be whatever their job might be: inside finishing, outside shooting, ground balls, goalies, face-off guys. Everybody it's more important. Like, pocket shape is more important than the men's game than there is the women's game, and that's not a question of who's better. This is simply men have in the men's game we have different rules as far as depth is concerned. So we have greater control over shape than we do in the women's game. Generally speaking, we want to make sure that whatever kind of shapes we're creating those shapes with how we string our sidewalls, and we want to try and do that to support the play style and the position of the player that we're stringing for. Something that I didn't really get into when I talked about this earlier today was talking about specifically how and why each different kind of pocket placement affects how the ball is released out of the head. You can have high pockets that have a lot of whip and go straight into the ground, and you can have low pockets that go straight up into the air. You can have mid pockets that do both. You can have there's a big difference, and I'd like to think that everyone who's in here listening right now really understands this, but there's a big difference between you can have a stick that cradles well and holds the ball where you want, and it can't throw well at all, and it sucks. And you can have a stick that doesn't look like it doesn't look like it's supposed to do what it wants to do, but it throws perfect every time. Performance for me, and this is just kind of an idea of how I go about my mindset of what I'm trying to do when I string sticks for people, and specifically for teams and college teams, is 100 out of 100 times I want sticks to perform. I like to think that I can create sticks that look good at the same time of being able to perform at a high level, but performance is the be-all, end-all. I'll sit there, and I've been one to say, if I'm doing copy-paste, if I got to do 4 heads for the same person, I can do an amazing job on a head that I've got to do. I've got the 4 pieces of mesh, and 4 of the same mesh and 4 of the same head. I can do I can do that over and over, and I can get those done in 15 minutes, 12 to 15 minutes a piece. I don't do that very often. Most of the time when I'm stringing heads, I'm pushing 20 to 30 minutes ahead, because how awesome and how good a job I do stringing that head is important to me, because that's why I do this, and people seemingly keep coming back to it because I do a good job. And I believe one of the cornerstones of doing a good job is paying extremely close attention to detail and being awesome. I want my heads to perform like awesome. And so that's why stringing quickly, while I can string quickly and do an awesome job, I'm rarely stringing quickly. I have literally never, ever tried to string a stick as fast as I possibly can, ever. Okay, let's see. What do I mean by play style? So this is what I have learned over, I played in college. I graduated in 2005. I took a year off and did, whatever kids do when they graduate college. And then I found the job and I found my passion and what I wanted to do. And so I've been involved in coaching college lacrosse at varying levels. I've coached men's lacrosse and women's lacrosse in college. I've coached Division 1, 2, and 3. I was very lucky to I coached for women. I coached at Duke for Duke women's lacrosse team. I was one of the assistants at Brown in 2016. We went in the Final Four. We lost to Maryland in the semifinals. I was able to coach a whole bunch of incredible players. So over the course of the time, I've seen many different styles, not even all of them, but many different styles of ways to play, different ways to play each and all of the positions. And so I may not be right in some of my opinions about play style, but I'm probably not, I would argue that I'm not wrong. Lacrosse is unique in that there's no other sport that I've ever heard of and that I know or have ever heard of, and I've done only a little bit of research on this, is there's no other sport with which the implement with which you play the sport not only varies so much from each individual to the next individual, but it's also how much different it changes how an individual plays by their own position, which is kind of what I talked about before. So lacrosse is unique. Like hockey, you can get a stick that has a different blade. It doesn't make that much of a difference to the high level players. The sticks will flex a little bit. Tennis, essentially everyone has a racket. Not every racket is the same. I get that. I'm not saying that. Not every hockey stick is the same, but a racket or a hockey stick or a baseball bat, the majors, they're all using wooden baseball bats. At the end of the day, it doesn't have that big of an effect on how you play the way that a lacrosse stick and lacrosse does. And so lacrosse is unique in that. So you think, just a couple of examples. You think about your feeding attackman who likes to, like Rob Pennell is a great example of a feeding attackman who he keeps his stick straight up and down a lot. So his stick, see if I can find a ball. His stick is typically kind of like a mid-low, and it's shifty. Like he could two-hand cradle, and the ball will sit up a little bit higher, but then he can go one-handed, and the ball will drop down, and it'll sit low without him really, it'll eventually roll out. It can roll out, but it can sit there without him having to cradle too much and not leave the stick. You've got your mid pockets. Where did I put that one? Here is a great example of a mid pocket. This is a Stallion Omega with some Mesh Dynasty in it. This is, I think, Divine 9 Rhombus. And so this is more of a mid pocket. There's not too much. It's pretty tight right up here underneath the plastic. As you can see, I can't really push that out. If I, put my back of my hand through it, it'll stay right about in that middle spot right there. The ball's not going to sit low in this stick. And if I try and, roll the ball out, or if I try to do this, and obviously this is now being a little bit illegal. Anyway, if I stretch everything out, well, it's illegal because I tied everything too tight to the inside down here. But ball rolls out. If I'm going straight up and down, ball's not going anywhere. I have to cradle and keep the ball right there, but also it's going to stay in that spot until it's trying to roll out. That's more of a mid pocket. I've already actually unstrung the pocket that I put together to talk about a high pocket today, but maybe this will kind of illustrate it a little bit more. This is kind of mid-high. I could definitely go higher. I don't have anything else right here in front of me that I can really use to illustrate a super high pocket, but I definitely have plenty of them posted on my Instagram. But it's just having the pocket sit up high is, again, where it sits is different for different positions. If you're going to have a defenseman or an LSM that likes to play on the wings and is really good at ground balls, you're probably not going to want to have that guy have a low pocket, because it's going to take literally longer and a further distance for the ball to get from the scoop to where the ball wants to sit. Whereas with something like this is not exactly, because I have the mesh pulled down in this Stallion Omega so far, as you can kind of see. This is almost kind of a Chenango variation with the mesh pulled down to this. Because I've pulled it down so far, there's a lot of stiffness right here in these little wings. I would not, like, you could give this to, like, this is going to throw really easy, and a defenseman could use this, but I wouldn't give this to somebody who would want to be as much of a, what do you call it? Who's more of like someone who's really good off the ground, because I want to make sure they are, let's see, I forgot to share my full screen with everybody. Nope, that's not what I wanted to do. Sorry about that, fellas. All right, well, maybe I had it right to begin with. I wouldn't really give this to any defenseman. It would be to specific people, because the ball's going to hold pretty up high up in here, but this isn't going to be as great on ground balls, because there's just too much tension in these corners, where if you're kind of like, if you're trying to, not so much Indian pickup, but if you're trying to scoop, kind of like just kind of grab a balls out of the air, it's not going to be as easy with something like that. Let's see, who and when, who needs to know stuff like this? Well, I hope for everybody that's kind of here right now, all the people that are here, hopefully, if you guys are all stringers, it's very important that you know that this is important to have. It's very important to place the pocket correctly for a player in their play style and their position, because you get it. I don't have to tell you guys the same way that I'm trying to tell like high school coaches and club coaches to be like, hey, the stick matters, because there's a lot of people that just don't get it. Like, you know, some of you will understand what I mean when I say there's a lot of people, there's a lot of college lacrosse coaches every single year that think they are reinventing the wheel and they have the best new offense that is unguardable. Trust me when I say it's all been done. The things that we are doing right now that coaches are like, oh my God, like no one's ever seen this before. Somebody else did 20 years ago and they stopped doing it. Like, it's all been done. We're not reinventing the wheel. I do believe I can say that there's, as far as stringing is concerned, we are like reinventing the wheel, and we are creating new things, because there's stuff that's available now that has never been available before. People were running 1-4-1s with mumbo picks 20 years ago. You know, people were doing like 2-man games 20 years ago. It's sexy now, but it's like people are trying to like do things. And there's all these coaches that don't understand how if you can't catch and throw, it doesn't matter what offense you're running. For an 8-year-olds, you know, 8-year-olds and 10-year-olds, you should not have 3 offenses for your 5th grade team. A 5th grade team should not have 3 or 4 different offenses and 4-man up plays. That is absolutely absurd. You practice once or twice a week and 1 game a week, it's absolutely absurd. You need to have to throw and catch. If throwing and catching is easy, everything else is easier. Coaching every position and coaching the game is so much easier when the kids in your team know how to throw and catch. So it's more important for you guys to understand as well that the most important people that need are the kids that need a stick to throw more than they need a perfectly placed pocket are younger kids. For kids that are like just starting anywhere like 6 years old to like 10 or 12 years old, it's more important you give them something that's easy to throw with than it is to have like a perfect high pocket or a mid pocket that has incredible amount of hold. As I just said a moment ago, like this pocket, I love the aesthetic of everything about this pocket. But as I just showed you a minute ago, like I can sit here like this. This is illegal. I can't give this to anybody. This is for me. I'm going to use this myself because this thing is a hammer, and I don't play as much. Like I play a little bit, but I still play like club, and I have guys that I play with that I played in my club. I played with for 20 years, but I'm not going out there to play in a college lacrosse game anymore. The most important thing that I do in lacrosse now is I coach for the Cannons, and I get to prepare our goalies. So I need sticks like this to shoot hard. So I make sure that my college or my pro goalies like are seeing shots that are the equivalent of what they're going to see during games. But I would never ever give something like this to a younger player, to someone who's 10 or 12 years old, because this isn't easy to throw with. It's easy for me to shoot with, but I'm skilled. I've done a lot of work to get to the point where I can use that stick, and I'll talk about skill a little bit later. As kids get older, they get into high school and obviously then into college, but more so in the middle school, high school range. If you're played for 5 or 6 or 7 years, you'll start to understand, after kids have kind of gone through puberty and they're maybe they're still growing, who knows, but like once they start slowing down from growing, they'll understand how they'll get an idea of what they can do from a physical and athletic sense. And typically you're kind of been fit into a position. And so you're trying to figure out where you fit, what style you want to use within that position. So once you're getting into late middle school and into high school is when you can start thinking like, okay, this kid knows what, if you're thinking about yourself or if you're stringing for other people, like once they're getting into high school, they'll start to understand what, like the style of which that they want to play, like a feeding attackman, a shooting attackman, a midfielder that just needs to be able to pick up the ball and throw it, or someone who likes to shoot from the outside. All of that, defensemen don't carry the ball as much, so they have less specific need. It doesn't mean that they need to be less skilled, but they don't need to have things that are as specific as offensive guys do, because their job is not to have the ball. Their job is to take the ball away from other people and then get rid of it quickly. Let's see. Do many players play with the wrong or not optimal pocket shape? Yes. Oh my God, yes. There are so many players that I have seen over the years at every single level. There's tons of young kids that, you're 6 to 10 to 12-year-olds that have no idea what is the proper pocket shape for them. But you'd also, all of you, I'm sure you'd be surprised at how many people at the professional level that are playing in the MLL and the PLL right now that are playing with something that is completely wrong for them. And they're incredible lacrosse players up here, or they're incredible athletes, and they've never had a conversation with somebody like me who can explain, like, hey, you could be doing so much better. You were a 3-time All-American in college, and you could be doing significantly better. Because a lot of the times those guys have egos, and they want to be like, oh, I was a 3-time All-American. I think I know what I'm talking about. And then I hand them a stick, and they come back, and they're like, what the hell is this? This is voodoo. What is this magic? And I'm like, you don't know what you're talking about. You're a good player, but you don't string, you don't understand sticks. And they're like, oh, okay, all right. And then we can have a conversation. So it still happens at every single level, but obviously it's much more prevalent at younger ages because they have less of an idea. They're still figuring out how they want to play. And most of them don't know anything about sticks or about stringing. Let's see. Part of the reason why people are using sticks that are not optimal and perfect as specific for their play style and their position is because sometimes at the higher ages in college and in the pros, it's like it's ignorance, it's ego, like they've gotten that far, why would they need to change? If I came to a brand new, let's say I go to the Cannons this summer, and let's say hypothetically that, oh no, that's actually a bad reference. I was going to say, let's say Casey Powell comes out of retirement and wants to play for the Cannons for 1 season. But I'll talk about him a little bit later. But if I'm going to a brand new school, let's say I get a head coaching position at a prep school in Massachusetts where I live. the first year that I'm there, I'm not going to try and change a senior that I only have a year to work with. Like, I'm going to start working on the freshmen and sophomores that I have 3 and 4 seasons to help, increase their ability, their level of skill. For a senior, like, I'm not going to give him a stick that's brand new unless he really wants it. That will change the way that he plays and expand his abilities, because most often, if you change the way that somebody plays, it's probably going to get worse before it gets better as far as the process of their maturation in getting better. One of the reasons why younger kids is like kids at a young age, like your elementary school kids, your middle school kids, and some of the younger high school players, they think they know what their play style is because they're trying to emulate their they're trying to emulate the style of their idols, of their heroes, like their players. If it's if there's a younger player who's, say a sophomore in high school, and his favorite player of all time is Rob Pennell, and he thinks that he needs something that Rob Pennell uses, but this is a young kid who's not particularly athletic, has good hands and has good skill, and he can get the ball in and out of his stick quickly, but he can't dodge. Like, it's tough because I don't want to say, like, hey, bud, like, you should be popping off the crease to catch and shoot quickly. Like, we can get you the ball and you can score, but you shouldn't be dodging. Like, and the tough part that, I mean, for any of the older coaches in here will understand, it's really tough for a coach to say, it's really tough for a coach to be in a position where they have to try and tell a kid that wants to play a certain kind of position, wants to play a certain position, a certain play style, that's not the right style for them. Some of you younger guys, you may kind of understand this. Maybe it's happened to you, and hopefully it hasn't, but that is just life. I'm not a smart lacrosse player. I'm a pretty decent lacrosse player because I'm more athletic than 98% of the people that I'm ever on a field with. So I try and out athlete people, but I've gotten better over the years because mostly because I've coached in college, and I am smart enough to know I'm smart enough to know how to not do what I'm not good at. So I stick to what I'm good at. I don't try to feed. I'm not a feeder. I don't have vision. I can run by people and I can shoot. That's what I do. And it took me a while to figure that out. Like, it was later in my college days that I figured out what it was that I needed to do. And thankfully, I at least had a stick that, like, and I strung my own sticks in college. I was no good at it. I could only string for myself. And I also didn't understand how to string a stick that could throw passes. All I could do with my sticks was shoot. And so I was good at shooting. I just wasn't good at throwing the ball. But there's a lot of younger players that get into the trouble because they're trying to emulate their heroes, and it's not what they should be trying to do. Let's see. I think stringers do play a very important part. There's just not enough good stringers out there, and there's just not enough good sticks out there compared to the entire population of people playing lacrosse. Like, the biggest area, I hope you guys all understand this, the biggest area of people playing lacrosse right now is like 10 to 12-year-olds. Because as you get older, like, there's, here's, kids down here at the very bottom, this is like your babies. So we'll call this like 6 years old. So the funnel starts at 6 and it opens up a little bit, and it gets really, really wide at about 12. And then at 12, people start self-selecting themselves out. And as, they start getting older and older, they get into high school, like less and less people are able to play in high school than played at youth. And then they get into college, and less people get to play in college than played in high school. And then they get into the pros, and there's a very tiny little people who can get in the pros. And also, like, getting older than pros, you're talking about, like, it still gets very thin as we go up and up and up and up. Like, there's not lots of people that are in their 30s and 40s. There's more now than there were 10 or 20 years ago. But as far as stringing is concerned, and you guys who are stringing for other people, the most number of kids that are playing right now are 10 to 12-year-olds, 10 to 12-year-old boys and girls in the United States, and I assume Canada as well. So, like, this, as stringers, for any of you else, if you guys are stringing for yourselves, if just yourselves, awesome. I hope I help. But if you're stringing for other people as well, you need to know that, like, that's the big group that we want to try and hit and have an impact on, because that will have the biggest impact in the long run, the next, generation, the next 10, 20, 25 years worth of kids. We want to try and do the stuff. I'm trying to do the stuff that I want to do, like, so that I can help the game of lacrosse, not a whole bunch of people that I strict sticks for. And so now I touched upon this a little earlier, talking about skill. Skill is very important, because skill can essentially trump stringing. If you can be better than the sticks that you're using or that you can use. And so there's 4 people that I'm going to mention right now that I think are people who have outskilled whatever stick that they're using. Gary Gate, Casey Powell, Lyle Thompson, and John Grant Jr. I don't know if that's what I would put on that. Those are the people that I would put on the Mount Rushmore, because these are 4 guys that are extremely, extremely successful playing both indoor and outdoor lacrosse. You cannot be successful at both the indoor and the outdoor professional games and not have a very, very, very high level of skill. And these 4 guys have won at every level, and in college, in professional indoor, in professional outdoor, and the things that they can do on a field, anywhere, indoor or outdoor on a field, are mind-blowing. I have never actually gotten my hands on a stick that Gary Gate uses. I've never gotten my hands on a stick that Casey Powell uses. I have put my hands on a stick that both John Grant Jr. and Lyle Thompson have used, because I've actually had the fortunate ability to coach against them. I've actually talked to Lyle at recruiting tournaments, because he's still active with some of the upstate lacrosse and some of the Native American club teams that are in upstate, that he helps them out with some club stuff over the summer. So I've seen him there and talked to him about his stick. And Junior, I've been able to not really talk to him a little bit, but I see what stick he's using. I'm standing on the sidelines. I'm paying attention to this. And then I see his stuff, and I've been able to talk to him after a couple of games in the MLL in the last couple of years. And it would blow your mind if you guys saw how simple and easy a pocket that they were using. Like, Lyle Thompson could use this. He wouldn't want to use it. This stick is so much more difficult to throw with than what he's using, because he needs to get the ball in and out of his stick so incredibly quickly. Like, these are 4 guys, like Casey, Gary, Lyle, and Junior. I guarantee you, if they're not playing in like the MLL championship, like if they're going to go play like a summer league game, every single one of them could pick up a girl stick, and they could go use a girl stick, and they'd still be the best player in the field, because they were already the best player on the field. It had nothing to do with what stick they were using. That is having skill. How do you develop skill? You throw. You throw more than you can possibly imagine. There was a year that I coached 1 year in high school in my career. I was an assistant coach at Weston High School in Weston, Connecticut. It's down in Fairfield County. And one of the things that myself and my other assistant coach did to try and make sure that all of our kids were actually legitimately working on their stick skills outside of practice was we had them do 50 right, 50 left, 50 catch and switch, 50 catch and roll away with a switch. So everybody had to do 200 passes. Everyone had to throw 200 passes before they could even step on the practice field. That was what they owed the coaches, 200 throws. And by the end of the season, like, we were outskilling some of our opponents. We were teams that were better than us. We were beating, and the kids were like, well, how are we doing this? And I'm like, well, in addition to everything you've done in practice, do you realize in the last 14 weeks, we've thrown 1,000 passes a week outside of practice. So you've had 14,000 more throws probably than most of the other people on the other teams. For you guys, if you guys are still playing yourself, and if you can kind of talk to your friends that are on your teams, I'm gonna look real close into the camera, because this is extremely important. If all you're doing is going to practice and just doing all of your drills, like throwing in whatever, even it's stick drills or in shooting drills or in transition drills or whatever it is, if all you're doing is going to practice and trying to get better at practice, you are going to be beat by somebody putting in 5 minutes every single day. I can go right now into my backyard. I have a 4x4 piece of plywood that I can go out in 5 minutes and get 200-300 reps in 5 minutes. And I can tell you right now, when I was in college, I did 2 hours a day. I would do 2 hours of practice, and then I would go in for an hour and a half to 2 hours after practice to throw and shoot, because I was so incredibly bad that that's how much I wanted to get better. I didn't have friends. Like, I did well in school, but I did my stuff, but I didn't have friends. I didn't hang out with my friends. I didn't go out at night. I didn't go out on weekends. I wanted to play lacrosse, and I wanted to get better. So I practiced more than anyone, and I got better. I got so much more better. The degree of how much I improved was so much further than everybody else on my team, and they all knew it because I worked harder than everybody else to improve. Now, I got to about as good. See you later, Chase. I got about as good as some of the other people on my team because I had 2 years of high school experience, and a lot of them had 8, 9, 10 before they even got to college. So I had a lot of catch up to play. But I got better in 4 years than anyone that I've ever seen, anyone that I've ever coached or played with, because I put in thousands and thousands of hours every single year. Not over the 4 years, every single year. I got better because I practiced harder. I took 1,000 shots every single week, including what I was doing on the wall. For my last 4 years in college, I took 1,000 shots a week, in season, out of season. I didn't get it every single week, but it was somewhere between 45 and 50 weeks a year for 4 years. I took 1,000 shots a week on top of going to college, on top of going to all my classes. On top of throwing, like on top of going to practice itself. Practice started at 4. I was on the field at 2:30 every day. I didn't have, I had one or two good friends in college. I had two good friends in college. I wanted to get better. And so I practiced and I practiced and practiced. And so that's a super long, drawn out story about skill. I had to get better just to be able to get onto the field. If you are just showing up at practice, you are doing the average. And I would say you're actually doing less than average, because I would hope that the average is doing a little bit of practice, doing a little bit of wall ball on their own outside of just going to practice. So if you expect to get better and you're not working hard outside of practice, other people are going to get better faster. So I didn't want to get into this too much, but yes, mesh matters as far as pockets and pocket placement. Some mesh is better for some stuff. Probably a lot of you are too young to ever have used 20 millimeter mark mesh. Right now, this is X Pro, this is Laxrum 8 diamonds, 7/8 diamonds. I'm going to put that into something soon. I like the stuff that has bigger holes is often better for I like it for high pockets. The 10 diamond rhombus from the Mesh Dynasty, you can do a lot of different things with. I don't know if I would do low pockets with it. I'm not sure. There's just so much mesh. There's certain things that I wouldn't want to do with it. You can certainly do high pockets and mid pockets with rhombus. 4S is my personal gold standard. If I could pick one mesh to use for the rest of my life, although there are a few that are now coming close to changing my minds. But Type 4 I think is personally the best stuff on the market. Yes, Denver, I will try and post more. Hero 3, I have not used that enough, but I'm really liking it so far. The Optic 2.0 with black string and black mesh, that's Hero 3. That came out incredibly well. I really like that stuff. I definitely want to use Hero 3 more. So there's some new stuff coming out from where is it? There's some new stuff coming out from SCX soon up here. Oh, Jesus. Top secret that I can't show you yet because I've signed a non-disclosure agreement and I don't want to lose all the stuff that I've gained from a relationship with STX, but there's some cool stuff that they've got coming out soon that I am really proud to be able to help out with, that I really like as far as being able to create good pocket shapes and get good performance. So, and then, to end it for all of you, well, no, not obviously done, but like, to end this little presentation, like the quality of the stringing matters for pocket placement. If you're like a poorly strung pocket, like is going to perform poorly. So for those of you who are, even if you're just doing it for yourself, or if you're stringing for other people, just remember that the quality of your work is your reputation. I'd like to think I have a pretty good reputation on being able to do good work, and I care about how good a job I do, to the point of like, my hands are falling apart. I've got skin falling off my fingers, and I've got calluses everywhere, and I tape myself up like crazy because I don't know a way to do good sticks without like using a lot of force, and I take time. So if you guys think it's important, like I don't know how important you think it is. Stringing fast to me is not important. If you take one thing away from this, how fast you string is not important to performance. The faster you are trying to string sticks, generally speaking, the lower the performance of each stick is going to be. I've always said that I can, if I'm doing copy paste, the same thing on certain heads, I can do them quickly, but that means like I can do them fairly quickly. I can pump out sticks in 15 minutes if I don't have to think about what I'm doing. But that's because I've put in thousands of hours and done thousands and thousands of sticks practicing at being awesome quickly. Okay, so let's see. I will start with some of the stuff, some of the questions that we have. Come on, where's the mouse? Where's the mouse? Where's the mouse? Why is this doing this? All right, maybe I don't even need it. There we go. Let's see. Questions that are in the chat. I'll do that first before I do all the other ones that you guys sent in for the forum. Which piece of mesh is up here in the little top secret thing? I can't tell you. Let's see. How does whip come into play like this? And how does whip come into play like this? And what are some ways to add and avoid whip from heads based on their pocket placement? Well, certainly tonight is not the night to get into why I hate using the word whip. If you haven't heard me talk before, I hate the word whip. I wrote my graduate school research paper on defining the term, and I think I did a better job, but I still don't think it's good enough. I did a better job than most of the way people describe it, because most of the way people describe it is so like narrow a view. Like they have their own very specific, most people have their own very specific view, and they're not wrong in the grand scheme of all the things that are right, but it's a very tiny view of like it throws down, it hooks the shooters. So rather than talk about whip, I talk about release timing, because if I say whip, you think of what it means to you, and I could be thinking of something completely different. Whereas it's a lot less of an ambiguous topic to talk about release timing, as in how early or how late or how soon or how quickly or how slow a ball comes out of the stick. That's a lot easier for two people having a conversation to understand. So when it comes to like adding, or generally speaking, regardless of where the pocket placement is, thankfully all of these remedies pretty much apply to all different pocket placements and pocket styles and shapes, whether it's a high, a medium, or low pocket. Generally, if I'm adding shooters in here, I am changing the shape, and I'm creating, hopefully you can kind of see that. Like I've just by pushing down in the mesh here, I changed the shape and the exit profile of what the ball has to follow. Whereas if it was on its own, if I'm pressing up here, like that's kind of like a straight line from where the ball wants to sit. Whereas if I do that and I put in a whole bunch of shooters and keep that super tight, the ball's going to come out a lot later, because the angle that the ball has to come out changes. So if I want to add, if I want to change the release time to have more hold and have the ball come out later, I'm going to add shooters, or if they're already there, I'm going to tighten shooters. And pro tip, you don't want to tighten the ball. If you're doing 3 straight shooters, let's see if I can find one on the wall here. Go figure, I don't have many sticks in here with shooters. This is a Lakota 2. So if I've got 3 straight shooters in this, If I want the ball to come out a little later, but I still want it to come out just as easy, I'm going to tighten the middle shooter here. And not so like the top one, by the time the ball touches the top one, it's already on its way out. This top shooter is only for feel. It has nothing to do with how the ball comes out. If I want the ball to come out just as easy, I'm going to leave the bottom shooter, this one, I'm going to leave that just as loose as it is, but I'm going to tighten the middle shooter. That will change the shape of the pocket, but not necessarily alter how easy it is for the ball to roll off of that shooter. Let's see, we got one more coming in late. If I'm trying, if also the other way to kind of to add a little bit of hold and make the ball come out a little later is to loosen the bottom string to make it easier to throw with. Like if I showed you this one right here, and this was this. No matter what you did with like tightening or loosening the shooters, it was still throwing down too much. I would say take out the bottom shooter, because generally the bottom shooter is the one that is the ball gets, when not even stuck on, but like ball will hold against the bottom shooter the most. If you had any other shooters in there, whether those shooters are not like, hockey laces or nylons, if there's three, by the time it gets to the top two, the ball's already coming out, and it's more about feel than hold. So if you want to take away whip or take away, like make it easier to throw with, tighten the bottom string and loosen or take out shooters. Wait. What are your thoughts on stringing 4X? Type 4 is my absolute favorite. There's a whole bunch of other sticks meshes that are right up there, but I like 4X probably because I've used it more than anything else. But I think it's incredible. Evan, here. If you guys have Evan Alexander, you have a question. Let's see. I just put my my email address in the chat. If anyone wants to privately send me emails after this, I can answer them more at length. All right, so now I'm going to go through what we have in here. Do you think defensive pockets should be high or low? Generally speaking, I have seen like 2 or 3 players in my career who have been very successful defensive players with low pockets, and I can tell you they didn't spend much time with the ball in their stick. Inherently, and I don't have any poles down here, but if I stand up, inherently, if let's say I have this is the butt end of the shaft, and obviously the shaft, this is a defensive stick, so it's a lot longer, but you understand the way that I'm holding this. The way that, especially if you're going to run with the ball with one hand on your stick and the stick is angled downward, or even if I have 2 hands on my sticks and you're power cradling a deep hole, the ball is inherently going to want to roll up and out of the stick if you've got a low pocket. So generally, I don't know if I've ever strung a low pocket for defensemen, but defensemen typically don't use low pockets. Defensemen typically use something that's mid with a lot of hold or high. And you can have a high pocket with a lot of hold, which is still easy to throw with. That is entirely possible. Evan, send that to me in an email. How do you ensure pocket placement has the hold or whip that you desire? As we all know, all pockets of the same placement aren't created equal. Absolutely correct. Similar to what I was talking about before, and some of you have heard me talk about this. 85 to 90% of what a stick should be able to do is in the shape and how you string the sidewalls. That last 10 or 15% is dialing in a little bit of shape, creating a little extra hold if you need it or want it. And then shooters add feel. So if I want to be able to feel the ball coming out of this, I might put 1 shooter in low. And even though there's nothing up here, I'll be able to, if I put 3 shooters in this stick, I wouldn't be able to feel the ball coming out nearly as much as I put 1 shooter and 1 shooter and 1 nylon stacked right on top of each other. So no, all pockets and are not created equal. So it's how tight or how loose or deep or not deep your pocket can be, and then what you're doing with your shooters to create the hold that you desire. What are the keys to getting a good channel in a high pocket when stringing to the inside? Very specifically, the keys are making sure that in this first segment of like the first couple of inches, you're pulling down a lot here. Like, you're pulling down hard on the first couple of holes, but you're not doing it for very far. And then for like this area right here, you're using a lot of mesh. So the thing that you want to understand with a high pocket that doesn't hook hard and throw straight into the ground and hook off the plastic is you got to make sure this area right in here, now this is obviously not a high pocket, but you want to make sure that inch below the plastic, there's still there's still some tension east-west underneath the plastic itself. You need that, or else the ball is going to hit off the plastic. You can still have all of this stuff you want. You can have a high pocket with a channel, but something that I want everybody to understand, channel, the way that people glorify having a great channel. Channel is not nearly as important as the ball being able to come out of your stick easy. You can have a stick that has good channel that's easy to throw with, but I see way too many people talking about like channel, and their stick won't throw. Again, like I can sit here and I can do some stuff and be like, oh yeah, like this stick has amazing channel. There's sometimes people might string pockets and then just you give the thing a little bit of a touch and be like, oh yeah, the ball's never coming out of this. I don't want a stick the ball never comes out of. I want a stick that holds when I want it to hold and comes out when I want it to come out, because it being able to come out of your stick quickly and easily is far more important than having hold and being able to throw fakes. Channel is not the most important thing that you can ever use. Rhombus versus hexagon in placement. We've all used hexagon. Rhombus is newer. For the most part, I have yet to figure out a piece of mesh and a pocket placement setup in a head that I can't do. I have yet to find that combination. Some are better than others, but it also, stringing style has something to do with that. So it depends on if you're stringing to the inside, you're stringing to the double outside, you're kind of stringing the regular outside. Both rhombus and hexagon are great. Just know that if you're using your typical 9-10 diamond 9-10 diamond rhombus, you are going to have to use more holes than you expected. Do you have much control over the placement of a pocket, or is it based on the shape of the head? The control is in the hands of the stringer. I can put low pockets in defensive heads that are supposed to have high pockets. I can put high pockets in defensive and offensive heads that are supposed to be low. The Ultra Power is a fantastic example of a head that they came out in STX is like, you should have a low pocket in this. And I just said, challenge accepted. And it did not take me long to figure out how to put a high pocket in it. That doesn't mean that high pocket threw well, but I can put a high pocket in a head that's supposed to be for low pockets. Like what kind of pocket placement you have is much more about what you are doing as the stringer than what head you're using. Though some heads are better for certain styles of pocket placements than others. Let's see. Pocket placement with different mesh in the same head. Different meshes perform different ways. If you use the same exact pattern for String King Type 3 and memory mesh, you're going to have a pocket that is an inch deeper in the memory mesh than you're going to have with Type 3 String King. So you have to understand that every mesh works differently, just like I said a second ago with 9-10 diamond rhombus. Like the Pacific Sunrise 9-10 diamond rhombus in the Mesh Dynasty. If you use an 11 diamond pattern, you're not going to have a very deep pocket. Whereas if you use Type 4, you're going to have a very, very deep pocket if you're using 11 diamonds. It all what mesh you use will dictate what shape you are going to get, and so on. Let's see. Attackman's pockets. I don't know what that's not really a question. What do you recommend for defensemen? Generally, I recommend mid-high, somewhere in the mid to high range. The more often someone does stuff on the ground, off the ground, means they're not just your traditional like ball release, perfect scoop through. Like if you're a pole and you're picking up ground balls at distance, I recommend a higher pocket so the ball can still come out easily, but there's just more room for the mesh to stretch and the ball to be able to catch in this area here, all the area where if you like a great channel, like a defenseman that likes a hard channel is someone who doesn't know what they're talking about. Defensemen should have a pocket that the ball is going to sit up much higher, and it's just quicker and easier for them to one or two quick cradles, and the ball will sit in that high pocket rather than in the mid or down low. So mid to high pockets for defensemen. How do you feel about heads being designed for certain pocket shapes, like the Maverick optics for low, tactics for mid, kinetics for high? I think kinetics are great for low pockets. I think optics are fantastic for high pockets. I think the Tactic 2.0 is a wonderful head, and it is great for any style of pocket shape. I put high pockets in Tactic 2.0s. I put low pockets. They're different. So that's the glory of what we're doing and like where we are in stringing and lacrosse right now is that we can do whatever we want. Like you can put whatever kind of pocket placement you want in any kind of head. It might not be as good as how you would do that pocket placement for another head, but you should do it to try to figure out if you can do what you can do, to figure out if you can do it in that head and how it's going to work. And if it's for you, if that's the best possible setup for you. You can not to say that those heads are not, kinetics are good for high pockets and optics are good for low pockets. That's what it was designed for. But don't so much of like what it was designed for is Maverick and STX and Warrior and all those other companies that make heads. It's marketing. It's what they tell you. That's what they want you to think. And they pay a lot of people a lot of money to figure out how to sell it to you, making you think you came up with the idea. How different top strings affect pocket placement and position? What kind of top string you do will have effect on what pocket you do. I think doing kind of drop top strings the way that I do them, that are more like this, are better for having pockets in the middle. So depending on how you set up your mesh, you can have high pockets with a top string like this. Generally, if I'm doing a pocket that's going to end up being lower, I'll do something that's closer to this, that's a little bit more, like I started on the third hole down here, but I'll do them that the mesh is a little bit closer up to the plastic. This is stuff that's worked well for me, and I haven't figured out how to literally verbally say it so that it's coherent. But as long as your top string is tight and it's symmetrical, you're in good shape for figuring out the pocket shape that you want. I endeavor and challenge all of you to figure out what top strings work good for you for what pocket shapes you want to try and do. What are some ways you can give a faster release on a low pocket? Make the pocket shallower and not as deep. Generally, the lower the pocket is, if it's hard to throw with, there's probably too much channel. And if you want a low pocket that's easy to throw with, make sure it's not particularly deep. Is there a way to channel a mid pocket? Yes, there is a way to channel a mid pocket. String to the inside. Pocket placement and movement depending on position. We've covered tips for stringing wider mesh. I don't think, when I'm thinking about what kind of pocket shapes I'm going to do, I don't think about whether the mesh is wide or not. I just look at it as like it's a different kind of mesh. The same way that I say like type 3 is different than memory mesh. Both are 9-10 diamond mesh, but they both act differently. So I don't try to compare them because essentially it's apples to oranges. So thinking like with this is the Lax Room 8 diamond mesh. I can't go into stringing a stick like this, just like I'll string a type 3 differently than memory mesh. I'm going to string memory mesh different than I will 8 diamond mesh. So I don't think about it from that perspective. I'm just like, how is this going to give me the pocket shape that I want? And I just do it and 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 redo it, redo it, redo it, redo it until I figure it out and have the pocket shape that I'm desiring. Generally speaking, like, and many of you have seen me do pockets on sticks that are all knots. If I'm doing a stick where I'm doing knots, like K's, all the way down, generally that's not the first time that I do it, because if you do K's all the way down, so not, and maybe singles and doubles or whatever, if I'm doing all knots, it's really hard to undo the knots and then redo them again. It's very, very time consuming. And when you're trying to do 20 to 15 to 20 heads in a day, like I have done sometimes, I don't want to spend 2 hours of a day undoing and redoing sidewalls to figure out what I'm doing. So typically if I'm doing knots, it means that I've already dialed in that pocket shape with ones and twos, with just typical your ones all the way down. Nope. How do I determine which placement I like best? Practice and reps. Try something, go out, give it a good whirl. Like, give it if you got a head, I don't know how long it's going to take you, but I would say if you're an offensive player and you're going to use a stick that you need to figure out how it's going to shoot, you need to take a minimum of 200 shots, hard minimum. You need to take multiple different kinds of shots in game-like situations, because that's when it's going to get used. So just like picking up a ball and doing a big power cradle and shooting it as hard as you can is not an effective way to figure out how that stick is going to perform. Take game-like shots. Same thing if you're throwing against the wall. Don't throw as quickly as you can. Work on getting the ball in and out of your stick as quickly as you can. And if that ball isn't going where you want it to go every single time, fix it. Change it, try again, start from scratch. Well, not scratch. If again, I've said this a couple times tonight, once you do the top string and it's symmetrical and tight, you don't have to redo the top string. Just unstring the sidewalls and restring them, pound it, try again. By the way, all that, no shooters. You don't put shooters in until after that thing is dialed. What is a high pocket to you? What is a mid favorite mesh for high pockets? Favorite mesh, I like I've said it a bunch of times, I like Type 4 right now. I like some other stuff that's coming out soon from STX. High pocket for me is generally the ball sits about, a high pocket is the ball sitting about 1.5 inches from the plastic. That's higher than I will typically feel comfortable giving anybody. Mid, it's just about in the middle. The effect of pocket placement has on the travel of the ball. Depending upon, let's see, this is a great example of a stick that I've showed a bunch of times tonight. This ball is not going to travel. It's not traveling east-west. It's not going to be moving north-south. This is something that we would categorize as our stringers, we'd categorize as kind of shifty, because if I'm playing with my stick straight up and down, the ball is going to sit down low. Whereas if I put two hands on it, and especially if I add some shooters, the ball is more going to roll up and be up high. Shifty, generally, in my opinion, kind of means that the ball, depending upon where you are and like how you're holding the stick with the ball in it, where the ball wants to sit. So travel is something that you have control over. If I wanted to make this ball travel less, I would probably I'd take out a hole of mesh on the sidewall, and I'd bump up the bottom string 1, if not 2 rows, just so that the ball wouldn't sit down at the bottom anymore, and it would just sit right there in the middle. I am looking for good pocket placements for an attackman who like to carry. If you carry one-handed, then you probably should have something mid-low or low. If you want, good amount of hold, then I would say go for the mid-low and try and get a longer channel. Then you add a bunch of shooters. I'd keep having shooters in there as low as you possibly can. But mid-low pockets don't typically hold against the shooters. Mid-low and low pockets typically are holding against the mesh and holding against the channel. Whether that, however, depending how far that is from the shooters, that's up to you. But the lower the pocket generally wants to be, the less likely it is that you're going to be cradling with the ball holding up against the shooters themselves. Is mid pockets good for everything? Just about. Like I said, for younger kids, using something that's lower is generally better. Using something that's like mid lowish, something that's easy to throw with and easy to cradle with two hands is very important. Does a high pocket actually have a quicker release? Because I have used low pockets that feel like they have the same release as a high pocket. Okay, pro tip, secret. Quick release is a learned, practicable, developable skill. You can have it, like as I said earlier, most of you would be blown away at how easy it is to throw with Lyle Thompson's stick. If you have to cradle 3 times to know where the ball is before you throw, that's you having to cradle, not the stick. Some sticks are easier to get the ball to come out of with others, and that's why I call it, like I start talking about release timing more than whip, because like I said, whip is ambiguous and there's lots of different meanings for it. But as far as quick release is concerned, quick release is always being ready to move the ball, not having to cradle a bunch of times before you throw. So you can have a quick release with a low pocket. You can have a quick release with a high pocket. It's skill. I talked all that time about developing skill. If you want to practice having a quick release, practice throwing the ball as fast as you can. No cradles, getting the ball in and out of the stick as fast as you can. Just throw strong hand, catch right, throw right. If you're a righty, catch right, throw right. Throw 100 passes in a row. The first time, every single time, figure out how long it takes you to do it. Even better, like this is the wall ball test that I developed over time. At first, when I was at Endicott, it was like, catch. It was right on right, left on left, catch and switch, catch and roll, cross hand right, cross hand left. Behind the back right, behind the back left. It was 10 passes of 10 different skills, and you had to do it 5 yards off the wall. Never in a game have I ever seen players, if you're 5 yards away from somebody, you're basically like popping the ball up to them. You don't I don't think you do a wall ball test at 5 yards. I made my guys stand 15 yards off the wall, and they threw it off the wall even with their body, and they caught the ball off a bounce. No, you're not catching balls off a bounce in a game, but I think it's actually more game realistic than even a real game, because the ball bouncing off the ground is going to put top spin on it. So if you just catch the ball up here, the ball's going to flick out of your stick and you're going to get a slower time. So I would do 25 right, 25 left, 25 catch the ball with one hand, switch and throw with the other, and then 25 catch the ball with your left hand, roll away, switch, and then throw with your right. So that's 100 throws. And I would say that 90 to 95% of all the throws you make in a lacrosse game, or you see everyone make in a lacrosse game, are right to right, left to left, catch and switch hands, and catch or roll away. That's just about everything that you're going to see. You can practice behind the backs, but you're not going to do them nearly as much as those other 4. So quick release is a skill. Ball retention. Not losing the ball. You see Canadians who play in college who are always cradling. They're doing these little fast cradles, and the ball never comes out of the stick. It's not the stick. They're really good, and they play indoor, which they have to have. You have to be better at keeping the ball in your stick in indoor. So when they get to outdoor, and people are taking these long, big checks, the ball's not going to come out nearly as easy. Or ball comes out more often for people in box, because it's a tighter space and everyone's closer together than it does in outdoor. So, practicing being able to keep the ball on your stick is not chance. It is a skill that you develop. Quick release is a skill that you developed. Let's see. Tim, are you here? No, I don't think so. Okay, fellas, it's 9:11. I want to say thank you very much. My email is in the chat. I know I haven't gotten everyone, but I actually have to step off here. So I am going to make sure that I can communicate with everybody that is. Let's see here. For anybody that asked questions, I'm going to try to make sure that I can answer them. But if I did not get to your question, my email is in the chat. It's lars@sidewalljedi.com, or you can go to my website, sidewalljedi.com, and you can fill out, if you scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page, it'll give you an opportunity to send questions to me. Please do that, and I will get back to you as quickly as I can. I will try to put the video of this up tonight. We are now recording. I'm going to stop in a minute. But I just want to say thank you very much for all of you guys that have stayed the entire way through. I know some guys had to leave, but I appreciate you doing this. Please, if you want to try and, if there are other people that you know of that be interested in tuning in and being able to watch this stuff, those are the people that I want to do all these workshops for and talk about topics and talk about stringing. Like this is the stuff that I want to do. So I'm going to mute myself for a second. I'm going to step away and I'm going to turn off my camera. And in about 2-3 minutes, I am going to stop the recording and stop the broadcast, because I want everyone to have an opportunity to see that my email address is in the chat. If I didn't get to your question, please shoot me an email tonight, like right now, so it's still fresh in your mind, and I will get back to you as quick as I possibly can. So thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. I will be back to talk to you soon. I may not be able, hopefully I'll be able to do another one of these this week. If not, next week. Thanks, fellas. Appreciate it. Have a good night.